Hey there. So let's talk about bottom boards. So bottom boards is one of those things we constantly get questions about in the store. Really, when people get started with bees, they were always asking about bottom boards and like, which one do I choose? So there are a couple of things in beekeeping that are easy to change later, and bottom boards is one of those. So you can, let's say the scenario is you start with one hive and you start with a screen bottom board and you don't like it, and you start with and you get a second hive. Well, the second hive just use a solid bottom board. And then when it's convenient, you can change the bottom board on the first hive to a solid bottom board from the screen. So bottom boards is not a life or death. I remember when I got started in bees, I always thought that, oh gosh, which one do I need to choose? Bottom board, solid, or a screen bottom board? And it's really not that big of a deal. I have used both. They both work perfectly fine. And there's not one that is better than the other because all beekeeping is different. Everybody's got different goals in beekeeping. So I don't say you should use this one because that's the best one. I will say this, when we sell beekeeping kits, we always sell it with the screen bottom board. There's a couple reasons why, but the main reason is we sell mostly our hive kits to a beginner beekeeper. And when they're getting started with bees, if you give them too many options, then they will feel like they have to decide everything and everything's a big deal. But like I said, bottom boards is not a big deal. So on the kit, we include a screen bottom board by default. So we've got a screen bottom board right here, and we got a solid bottom board right here. And we're gonna go through some reasons and differences between these two and why you might want to choose one bottom board over the other. So personally, in my hives, I use solid bottom boards. I prefer them, I like them for my situation, and I'm a fan of them. But when I started, and for years, I used screen bottom boards, but as my apiary grew and I had less time and things got a little bit more complicated and I wanted to simplify things, I started using solid bottom board for all of my hives, and I phased out the screen bottom boards. But as a beginner beekeeper, a screen bottom board is a better option for most beekeepers. So let's go through and talk about some of these differences. So this is a solid bottom board right here. So they call it a solid bottom board because the floor of the hive is solid. There's debris falls onto this from the bees or the wax above, or something drips on it. It's just gonna hit this and gravity is gonna take over. So if you've got one of these and it's tilted back, what will happen is if rain will come in through the front right here, and it's gonna hit and it's gonna pool in the back of the hive. And that's just what's gonna happen. So if you do have a solid bottom board, you just wanna make sure that the hives are tilted forward a little bit so that if rain does kind of come in through the front, it doesn't roll to the back of the hive. So you want it to tilt forward a little bit. Adversely, you can also just drill a hole and put a little screen over it, or just drill a hole right here and a hole right here so that if water does collect there, it'll drip right out. So this is the bee side of the bottom board. So you can see that it's got a rail here. It's got a rail here and a rail here, and that is actually what the box will sit on. So the box will sit on these rails, and on the front of it, there is not a rail right here. So what happens is there's gonna be a gap right here below the box and above the bottom board, and that's gonna be the entrance of the hive. That's how bees are gonna be going in and out of the hive. And then you flip it over, it's pretty much the same thing. The only difference between that side, the bee side, and the not bee side is not have a rail on the back right here. You'd be surprised how many beekeepers send us pictures and they're confused about something, and I'll say, hey, send us a picture of your hive. And they send it to us and they have their bottom board upside down, and the bees are able to go in through this side and they're able to go in through this side. I will say that there are some manufacturers that will actually put a rail on this side and also on this side, and the idea there is that you could flip the bottom board over and you can make it work. You can have a smaller entrance. Like this is a 3/4 inch piece of wood right here. So that means there's gonna be a 3/4 entrance on the front. Some beekeepers will put a smaller like 1/2 inch rail right here and on the sides. And when you put a box on it, the entrance will be shorter, be a 1/2 inch. So this is how our bottom boards are, just 3 rails on the bee side of it. So this is the solid bottom board. The reason that this is kind of nice for beekeepers is it is going to stop the wind, and there's not going to be as much airflow coming through the hive in and out of it. That's one benefit if you are pro no ventilation. Another positive is if you're doing certain types of mite treatments, but oxalic acid is one, and Apiguard is another one, where you want to have a solid bottom or a closed off bottom so that mite treatment will be a little bit more effective. So you actually, for oxalic acid, for example, you actually have to close off and seal the hive as best as you can, and having a solid bottom board makes it a lot easier. So that's why I kind of like them, is because when I do mite treatments, I don't have to worry about closing off the fence. I don't have another piece of equipment that I need to move around. So I do like, they're just simpler and a little bit easier to use for us. So that's the solid bottom. Let's talk about the screen bottom board here. So like I said, this is what we include with our beekeeping kits. So it has the exact same design as the solid bottom, but it has, instead of pieces of wood here, it's cut out and it has a screen. And this is 1/8 inch hardware cloth or 1/8 inch mesh. That basically means that there are 8 holes for every square inch. So it's called hardware cloth. That's just kind of what they call it. And our screen bottom boards are a little unique, and we really love these. We've kind of designed these to be really pro hobby beekeeper friendly, and we are fans of these. So it has those same rails, you know, one here, one on the back, and one on the side. And it doesn't have one in the front. So this is the bee side of the bottom board. And the entrance of the hive is right here. So the bees would go in through this opening right here, and the boxes would sit on that rail. So this space right here is going to be exposed to the wind and the air, and it will get wet, or not the wind, rain, and the air. So this part right here will get wet, just like with the solid bottom. But with ours, all of our wood is cypress wood, so you actually do not have to paint it if you do not want to. I mentioned on the solid that if rain gets in this way and it's tilted to the back, it'll just run to these corners. But with the screen bottom board, you don't have to worry about that as much. Like your hive can be off center, and if water gets in through the front, it's just going to go through the screen and it's not going to collect on the inside. That is a real positive. With the screen bottom board, you're going to get a lot more airflow. So the air will come through the bottom and out the front, or it'll go out the top of the hive. If you are pro airflow, then that is a positive for you. But the business end of our screen bottom boards is on the back. So we have a few things that make it unique. So we've gone through the effort on our bottom boards of putting a notch right here and a notch right there. And these are very, very low profile notches, small tolerance for this. And the reason is because we will put a corrugated board in here, or we'll put a small hive beetle oil tray in here as well. We're based in Alabama, we're in the South. We have a lot of small hive beetles in our area and all across the South. So having a way to combat those small hive beetles is great. And then also we put in a cleat right here. And that cleat serves as a backstop and also serves as a way to make this small hive beetle tray more effective. First, I'll start with this Varroa board right here. So these are some boards that we designed, and it's got some spots where you can put some notes on here. And then it has a grid right here. So it has A through Q here, and it has 1 through 11 there. And this is an 8-frame bottom board I happen to be showing you. And these colors contrast the best with the color of a Varroa mite. So this is actually why we chose these particular colors, because it is easier when a Varroa mite lands on this to count it against these colors, just a little bit better contrast. But it's very thin corrugated material. It's actually 2 millimeter, and we make it super low profile so that it fits perfectly in this little entrance right here. Working from the back of the hive right here. And we're gonna take this Varroa board and we're going to slide it in here. So you can see it slides in there very nicely, and you're now stopping airflow from getting from the bottom of the hive up through it. And this is, like I said, it's helpful when you're doing oxalic acid or some of the other mite treatments. It also is helpful if you can watch the debris fall onto this. So with the screen, there's going to be a certain amount of mites and there's going to be a certain amount of debris that kind of falls through this screen onto this board. And with the board out, it will just fall straight through onto the ground. That trash will fall out of the hive. The bees don't really need to carry it out. But if you have this board in there, it'll fall onto the board and you can actually pull this board out and you can count the Varroa mites or the other debris that is on this. It's kind of helpful in the winter sometimes, like if the brood nest is kind of off center of the middle of the hive, you can actually pull this out and you'll see that debris field kind of on this side of the hive, and you'll kind of know where the brood nest is, which is kind of a handy feature. So you can see how this backstop works right here. So it keeps you from pushing the board too far through the front. So that's a nice feature, but really we kind of designed that little backstop so that we can use it with our small hive beetle tray. So this is the small hive beetle tray. So it is about 1 inch deep and it has these little corrugated boards right here. And what happens is you would fill this up with oil. You wouldn't fill it so much that it covers these baffles. These baffles are if the hive is unlevel, that all the oil won't pool to the very corner of this tray. So you just put cooking oil or kitchen oil into this bottom tray, and then you would slide it in. And this is for small hive beetles specifically. So that same groove on the back will actually now hold this tray. So you can kind of slide it in like this, and then you would take oil and kind of put it in this because it's just easier to fill it if it's already partially in. And then you would just slide it all the way forward. And you can see like it overlaps really nicely. So if the rain hits this, it'll just fall right off of it. And you can see on the front, the board is not sticking there out. And then it has this nice cleat that kind of stops it. So you can see how this piece right here slides really nicely into that cleat right there, and it stops it. So when we used to sell these, we didn't have these cleats, and we kind of were having an issue with, in the summertime when small hive beetles are an issue and people were using these, that bees would beard all along the front of the hive and they would hang down right here. And what would end up happening is the bees would work their way into the oil pan and get into the oil pan. So with our bottom boards, you can see like it's really nicely, it's real nice and snug right there. And on this side right here, so that bees cannot actually get into this oil pan. And you can see this cleat and this overlap stops them from getting in here as well. So the fact that this bottom board has the ability to have the small hive beetle tray, and this makes it a lot more beginner friendly. And that is the reason that we kind of recommend them for beginners, because it's just a nice quality product and it gives you more flexibility. If you like airflow, awesome. If you don't like airflow, just slide in this little board. If you have a small hive beetle problem and you need to get rid of them very, very quickly, you can put this little board in there, and that's really nice and convenient. And so you've got options just like in a lot of things in beekeeping, but not all of them are super important. And we are fans of the screen bottom board and we're fans of the solid bottom board. They both work really, really fantastic. And we carry both at Foxhound. We sell both. We recommend both, but they don't work for everybody. But if you want to change it, it's no big deal. So hopefully you found that interesting. If you got any questions about these bottom boards, you can comment and send us a message. We're happy to help you. If you want some more videos, we haven't explained anything real well to you and you want to see how another product works, just let us know. We're happy to do it. We've got all these products and we're educators and we love talking about this kind of stuff. So if you got any questions, feel free to ask, and thank you for watching and I appreciate it.